Hey guys, Steve here from Bloom Audio. Today we're going to talk about the recently released U6t from 64 Audio. So the U6t is kind of like the U12t, only with half the drivers, but definitely more than half the performance. So let's dive in and take a look at this exciting new IEM. So if you're familiar with 64 Audio's designs, there's a lot of grays and, flat surfaces, not very ornate. But 64 Audio seems to be evolving the look of their universal IEMs to have a less of a utilitarian look and a little bit more personality to them. So looking at the Nio, the U18s, even going back a little bit to the Forte, which, had a little bit more color to it than a lot of the grays and blacks of the Trio or the U12t. So now the U6t is still dark gray and black, but it has this little sort of raised, smooth logo here, which gives it a little bit more style. So, and the accompanying package has taken a little bit more of a consumer and a little bit less of a pro audio look to it as well. So they've improved their selection by adding spin fit tips as part of the package. They've also replaced the case with, it used to be a plastic, sort of like a Pelican case, with this sort of little softer leather wrapped case. It's very nice, and most importantly, with the U6t, they've upgraded the cable. This cable definitely has a much more premium look and feel. That's going to appeal to a lot of people over the previous one, which was a little bit thinner, didn't quite have the best aesthetics and feel to it, even though it was functional. And of course, you get the other pack-in still, cleaning brush. And 64 Audio remains one of the only guys that gives you a lapel clip with your earphones to help keep them in place. And of course, there's also the Apex modules, which are really great for allowing you to tweak the sound a little bit without having to use EQ or something like that. So altogether, really nice design on the new IEMs and a solid package. So the design and package is all great, but obviously the most important thing here is what 64 Audio has been doing with the sound. Now the U6t draws the majority of its inspiration from the U12t. There's a similar balance of neutrality and musicality, and it really just, it reveals the depth and complexity of music while maintaining a sort of a smooth, addictive quality to it. Where you can hear everything that's going on, you can hear these micro details and other things, but it doesn't lose the enjoyment of the music in that touch of more reference analytical feeling to it. So now the U6t may actually take a bend towards being a little bit more fun than the U12t. I just feel a little bit more bass presence with the U6t than I did with the 12. And the bass is a little punchier. Now it remains very accurate and tight. This is still an IEM that's going to give you realistic, accurate bass. There's just a touch of extra fun in there when compared to the U12t. The treble is similar, where you're going to get a balance between providing the definition, having accuracy there, but also maintaining a non-fatiguing presentation in the treble that isn't harsh or bright. In terms of the technical aspect, the U6t can't quite match the U12t. The soundstage and imaging and all that are quite good in the range, but it's not the same massive soundstage with just incredibly accurate holographic imaging of the U12t. I do think the resolution has a really similar feeling. It's resolving in the same way that the U12t is. But it's just kind of the size and the accuracy of the imaging is where it ends up coming up short of what the U12T can do on a technical end. I should also talk a little bit about the Apex modules that I mentioned before. So most of my impressions are based on what's installed out of the box, which is the M15 module. There's also an MX module and the M20 module that comes with it. And there's an M26 that you can get off their website direct from 64 Audio. So basically M15 is in the middle in terms of the isolation. So what these modules are changing is how much air you're venting, and that tends to have the biggest effect on the low end performance and the sound stage. So with the MX, the sound stage feels wider, the bass feels like there's more of the bass, but that also feels less tight and punchy to my ears when you're using the MX. That's kind of widening it out. So then the M20, you get a tighter bass with a more focused sound to it, but it's not quite as much volume to the bass. And then the sound stage feels like it closes in a little bit. So the M15, which you get, is in between there. Not as open as the MX, not as closed as the M20. So along with the sound changes, you're also dealing with the amount of outside noise that's going to be able to get in and the amount of music that's getting out from the IEMs. So with the M15 and the M20, I didn't really notice much bleed out, and there's really solid isolation from what's coming in. With the MX, I actually have noticed a bit of bleed out, where at higher volumes, the music that you're listening to will be audible to somebody standing close by with the MX modules in a way they're not with the M20. There's also an M26 I mentioned that is available online, and that is a completely closed off. So there's no venting there. In addition to the sound, another consideration is things like if you're riding on public transit a lot or on a plane, the tighter isolation might be preferable just from a noise perspective, if not from a sound preference perspective. While we've been talking a lot about the U6t and the U12t, probably a more apt comparison for most shoppers would be the U6t and the Nio, where the U6t now replaces the Nio as the entry point into 64 Audio's universal IEM lineup. So they definitely share some similarities. There's sort of a 64 Audio house sound you can hear across pretty much their whole range. Most notable difference is, of course, in the bass, where the Nio definitely has a stronger emphasis on the bass, on the low end, than the U6t does. So again, while the U6t does have this deep, rich low end, the Nio ultimately has more depth, more volume to the bass, a stronger, more physical impact than the U6t does. I think also just more sort of detail on the low end as well. Once you get above 600 hertz, though, the U6t is going to have fuller mids and a treble that is better balanced with the bass. So then on a technical end, both have very similar, I think, technical qualities in general, but I would say the Nio has a slight edge in the size, the feeling of size, the sound stage, probably the imaging as well. It's kind of generally more convincing in the sense of space. And the sound is a little more organic with the Nio. That might be somewhat personal preference, where I typically find hybrid IEMs to have just a little bit more of an organic sound than all balanced armature-based ones. So speaking of all balanced armature-based IEMs, the Campfire Andromeda is definitely another strong comparison there. There's a lot of similarities between the Andromeda and the U6t in terms of the tuning and in the presentation of the 3D image. In terms of the imaging and the sound stage of the two, both really strong, both prevent present kind of similar, pretty big feeling, very strong imaging there. The differences in the tuning is very much case by case. I think there's a little bit more in the mids in the U6t, but some of it might be the sort of thing where you're gonna have to overlay frequency analysis and see, oh, the U6t is a little stronger here. The Andromeda has a little bit more going on here in the lower mids, or something like that, where, you know, it's going to be on a song by song sort of basis when you're listening to difference as to whether the Andromeda presents the guitars a little stronger here over the vocals, where the U6t maybe on this track has the guitars a little stronger against the vocals, which are here. So it's very similar. Definitely, if you get a chance to do a side-by-side to A/B them, if you're in the market for IEMs in this price range, I'd definitely recommend it. I'd say the big difference where the U6t has an advantage is in the resolution. The U6t just, again, it kind of shares that aspect with the U12t, that feeling of resolution, the resolving nature of it, where I just find the U6t to be a little stronger there than the Andromeda. The U6t is absolutely a great IEM, and I think what its biggest accomplishment is that it met or exceeded its expectations. What we were all hoping for when the U6t was announced was something that was like the U12t in a more budget form. And I think the U6t has given us that and exceeded our expectations of what that might look like in how good it is for the price. So as the new entry point into 64 Audio's universal IEM lineup, the U6t makes it easier than ever to get that distinct blend of reference level detail and emotional musicality. Thanks for watching. You can check out the U6t and other products and reviews at bloomaudio.com, and we'll be back soon with more hi-fi personal audio content.